John Tyler's presidency began under extraordinary circumstances. He was the first vice president to ascend to the presidency after the death of a sitting president, William Henry Harrison. Tyler's immediate and decisive action in assuming the full powers of the presidency set a vital precedent for future transitions of power. Despite the derisive nicknames given to him like his accidency, Tyler's firm stance ensured future successions were both orderly and constitutional. In today's episode, we're going to look at the rocky administration of John Tyler, which will culminate in the election of 1844. Let's get started. Tyler's decision to retain all of Harrison's cabinet was his first major misstep. This cabinet included several ambitious Whigs who resented Tyler's sudden rise. The real leader of the Whig Party, Henry Clay, thought that he could control John Tyler just like he had William Henry Harrison. However, when Tyler began to assert his own authority, he alienated Congress. Tyler's veto of a bill that would resurrect the National Bank of the United States led to mass resignations of his cabinet and eventually his expulsion from the Whig Party. This act of defiance against Clay and the Whig-controlled Congress set the tone for Tyler's tumultuous administration. Despite being politically isolated, Tyler demonstrated that a president could exercise significant power without party support. He used veto power frequently, blocking high tariff bills and frustrating Whig efforts to establish a national bank. The Whigs will even initiate impeachment proceedings because of their frustration, although these will prove unsuccessful. Amidst all of these political battles, Tyler is also going to face personal loss with the death of his wife, Letitia, from a stroke. 5 months after her death, Tyler will begin courting Julia Gardner, a prominent socialite 30 years his junior. Their eventual marriage will cause quite the stir in Washington. One of Tyler's most significant initiatives was his drive to annex Texas. Texas had declared its independence from Mexico 5 years before Tyler came into power, and Tyler saw the annexation of Texas as his path to political redemption. This decision, however, was fraught with controversy because Mexico still saw Texas as its territory and threatened war if the United States interfered. Additionally, the prospects of adding another slave state to the Union was deeply troubling to many Americans, especially those in the North. Tyler was a slave owner and an advocate of states' rights, and therefore he saw adding another slave state as a way to restore his political fortunes. His new party, the Democratic Republicans, rallied around the slogan, Tyler and Texas. However, Tyler's decision to appoint John C. Calhoun as his Secretary of State proved to be a serious miscalculation. Calhoun's outspoken pro-slavery stance alienated many in Congress. His address to Congress included a defense of slavery, which further exasperated those tensions. And despite having the support of many prominent figures like former President Andrew Jackson, the annexation treaty is going to fail in the Senate. Undeterred, President Tyler is going to submit a joint resolution, and this would only require a majority vote in both houses of Congress. The resolution passed, and Tyler is able to sign the Texas statehood bill into law just days before leaving office. While Tyler struggled domestically, his foreign policy was notably successful. He understood the importance of the Asian Pacific region for trade, and so he's going to send a diplomatic mission to China, which will result in the commercial and consular relations that granted the United States the same trading concessions as the British. He's also going to extend the Monroe Doctrine to Hawaii, warning the British to stay away from the Hawaiian Islands, and this will eventually down the line lead to Hawaii's annexation into the United States in 1898. Closer to home, however, we have the Webster-Ashburton Treaty, which was negotiated by then Secretary of State Daniel Webster, which settled a long-standing border dispute between Maine and British-controlled Canada, improving diplomatic relations with the British. In addition, Tyler ended the costly and bloody conflict with the Seminole Indians in Florida. This war, which began with the United States defrauding the Seminoles of their lands, had dragged on inconclusively. The Tyler administration will broker peace with the Seminoles in 1842. Tyler will also push for westward expansion into the Northwest, advocating for a chain of forts to be built from Council Bluffs, Iowa, all the way to the Pacific, though he could not secure a treaty with the British establishing Oregon's boundaries. As Tyler's term came to an end, he found himself more politically isolated than ever before. Both the Whigs and the Democrats rejected him. His followers will nominate him as a third-party candidate, but he has no chance of winning in 1844. The Whigs will nominate Henry Clay, a seasoned politician who has substantial support throughout the country. The Democrats, on the other hand, are going to nominate James K. Polk, a relatively unknown figure from the state of Tennessee. And Polk's nomination comes as a surprise because the former president, Martin Van Buren, had already appeared to secure the majority of all the Democratic delegates. That all changed at the Democratic National Convention. The Democratic National Convention, which was held in Baltimore in May of 1844, was dramatic. Van Buren, who was the frontrunner, lost favor at the convention due to his opposition to Texas annexation. His stance, which alienated him from the Southern delegates, led to his downfall. After multiple ballots, James K. Polk emerged as the first dark horse candidate to be nominated by a major party. The Democratic platform called for a strict adherence to the Constitution, opposition to things like the National Bank and high tariffs. They also supported Texas annexation and the reoccupation of Oregon. The Whigs, led by Henry Clay, adopted a platform supporting high tariffs, restrictions on presidential vetoes, and one-term presidencies. Clay's opposition to the immediate annexation of Texas contrasted sharply with the views of James K. Polk, offering voters a clear choice. The Whigs will also nominate Theodore Frelinghuysen as the vice president, hoping his anti-slavery views will help balance the ticket and attract those northern voters. The 1844 presidential campaign was one of the most bitterly contested in American history, characterized by personal attacks and strategic political maneuvering. Both sides used mudslinging tactics to undermine their opponent, making the campaign a spectacle of character assassination and rumor mongering. The Whigs targeted James K. Polk in a relentless campaign to try to discredit him. They're going to constantly ask the question on the campaign trail, who is James K. Polk? Right? The slogan is designed to emphasize the lack of national recognition of a James K. Polk compared to their candidate, Henry Clay. The Whigs wanted to portray Polk as this insignificant, inexperienced politician who was unfit, unworthy of the presidency. The Whigs are also going to circulate false stories about Polk's character, painting him as a puppet of the slaveocracy, a term used to describe the Southern slaveholding elite. They accused him of being controlled by pro-slavery interests and argued that his policies would lead to the expansion of slavery at the expense of the nation's moral and political integrity. Now, these allegations were intended to alienate the Northern voters who were increasingly becoming more and more concerned about the expansion of slavery. In response, the Democrats are going to initiate their own smear campaign against Henry Clay, attacking his moral character, accusing him of many sins and wrongdoings. The Democratic press will portray Clay as a man of loose morals and questionable ethics, even alleging that he was notorious for his blasphemy, gambling, and vindictive behavior. The Democrats are also going to play up the rumors of Clay's womanizing habits. Stories will circulate about his frequent trips to Washington brothels, painting him as a man who had systematically violated every one of the 10 Commandments. This was a strategy designed to tarnish Clay's reputation and appeal, particularly with the religious and morally conservative voters throughout the country. Additionally, the Democrats are going to suggest that Clay was a secret abolitionist, an accusation that is very dangerous in the South where pro-slavery sentiment was prevalent. By casting doubt on Clay's commitment to upholding the institution of slavery, they hoped that they could undermine his support with those Southern voters who feared he might not be working in their best interests. The Polk campaign, on the other hand, focused on expansionist promises and clear policy goals. The Democratic slogan became 5440 or fight, referring to the northern boundary of the Oregon Territory at latitude 5440. This slogan, which encapsulated Polk's commitment to American assertion of the entire Oregon Territory, resonated with Americans who supported westward expansion and the economic promises that came along with it. Polk is also going to promise the annexation of Texas, which declared its independence from Mexico in 1836. This is attractive to the Southern voter who is interested in the expansion of slavery as well as increasing the Southern political power in Congress. However, he's going to couple that with the promise to add Oregon, which will be attractive to those Northern voters who are interested in adding new free territories to the Union. Polk's strategy cleverly balanced the appeal of adding a slave state in Texas with the promise of a new free state in Oregon. This approach was designed to unite the Democratic Party's diverse factions and appeal to voters across regional lines. By promising both expansion into the Oregon Territory and the annexation of Texas, Polk managed to address the concerns of both Northern and Southern voters, ensuring broader support for his candidacy. The election of 1844 was one of the closest and most fiercely contested elections in American history. James K. Polk will come out victorious, securing 170 electoral votes to Clay's 105. But look at the popular vote. The popular vote is so narrow. Polk wins the popular vote by a margin of 38,367 votes. This highlights the deep divide that is occurring over key issues such as Texas annexation and territorial expansionism. The state of New York is going to play a crucial role in the election of 1844 in that they hold 36 electoral votes. So whoever wins the state of New York already has the upper hand. And there is a third-party candidate who's going to play a pivotal role in determining who wins that state. His name is James G. Birney, and he is running on the Liberty Party ticket, which is an anti-slavery ticket. And this is attractive to a lot of the abolitionist Whigs who don't necessarily trust a Henry Clay presidency. Birney's going to win 15,000 votes in the state of New York. That's not enough, obviously, to win the state of New York, but it's enough to keep Clay from winning the state of New York, essentially handing the election to James K. Polk. The election of 1844 also highlighted broader trends in American politics. Much of the success that Polk had in this election was due to the effective campaign strategy of the Democratic Party to appeal to the expansionist sentiment of those voters living in the South and the West. By promising to annex Texas and moving into Oregon country, the slogan of 54-40 or fight was far more effective for Polk than Clay's strategy of kind of sitting on the fence on the annexation of Texas. The election of 1844 was a major turning point in American political history, reflecting the growing tensions over issues like slavery and expansionism that will eventually lead us to the American Civil War. Polk's narrow victory over Clay also underscore the importance of strategic electoral maneuvering and the power of third-party politics in determining the outcome of national elections. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.